studies trauma, and I'm really into trauma because I think autistic symptomology and PTSD symptomology have a lot in common, actually. This guy studying trauma, whose name I think is Peter Levine, he noticed that animals in the wild don't get PTSD because if you like shoot a gun around a deer, the deer will run off into a full body shape. The deer will express itself, express its inner fight or flight response, and then kind of discharge it. If it isn't able to do that, that's what PTSD is. It's the feeling of drowning in what you can't express, drowning in the fear, drowning in the longing for expression that isn't able to express itself. And to me, if there's any anxiety or any feeling of disorientation in autism, it's because we're drowning in an intense world that we cannot surface from, an intense world that is difficult to surface from at the very least. And to me, that's what it means when we stim, is we're attempting to physically express what is internally seething in us, what we're drowning in. And that the experience of autism is the attempt to surface from a flood of sensations, a flood of input, a flood of reaction. And to me, what you were talking about, mindfulness, is the solution to that. Mindfulness is letting each impulse, letting each emotion, letting each urge to action find its own form. Because if it doesn't find its own form, you'll drown in it. You'll drown in the things that are trying to surface in themselves, so to speak. It's the best metaphor I can think about this is the story of Noah's Ark from the Bible. I think this is what Noah's Ark is about, actually. It's a story about a people who were, it says in the Bible, they were violent, right? And violence in a certain sense, and if there is any violent tendency in some autistic people, I think this is why, is because violence is one way to surface from a flood of seething impulse. It's to surface from oneself by an external symbol of your internal pain, right? That's what self-harm does. That's what you do in self-harm, is you make an external symbol through an external wound of the internal wound you feel. And then in the Noah's Ark story, right, what happens is that the floodwaters come and everyone is disoriented. The ground drops out from beneath their feet. Everything is underwater. There is no ground. There is no safe place. There is no orienting point. Everything is in flux. And the thing that saves the world is to have two of everything. What do I mean by that? Well, if you have the impulse, you already have one animal. If you have the impulse to scream, to yell, to lash out, or any negative or even positive thing, you can be overwhelmingly happy and it can be uncomfortable. But if you do that and you image it somehow, give it some expression, whether that's the expression in the mindful awareness of the emotion, or even just drawing it, or writing it, or sculpting it, that will give it its partner. And when the animal, the emotion in you finds its partner, then it's safe. You don't have to be a part of it. Then you're not its partner. You can let it go. The emotion finding its expression means that the emotion doesn't have to stay with you. That's the lesson of mindfulness, is that if you form something that is formless, you can let it go. Just it's the mindfulness idea, is that you just watch the thing go and it goes down the river. It's forming the thing that is formless. Because unless you form it, unless it is in a specific place, it's everywhere and anywhere at once, and that's scary. So to me, what I would say that is the most important thing to understand about autism from my perspective, from where I'm sitting, is it's the feeling of drowning in what we can't control. And it's the feeling of, and the possibility of what it would mean if we were able to form all of those things together, to build an ark, to build a mosaic, as it were, of every experience we have. I think we are burdened by our possibilities. And that cripples us. We are burdened by what we are called to, and therefore by what cripples us. But if we were able to give a form to all of that, we could be a wealth for the world that could help it immensely. But we're crippled by our gifts. And to me, that is both a great comfort and a great discouragement. But it's a great comfort in the sense that I know that I have insights, possibilities, gifts that the world needs, and that if I find a way to express those and bring those out into the public sphere, that the world can be helped, that I can help the world, a world that is sick and in its own way is disoriented, that I can help it find healing. So there you go.
Okay, raise your hand if you have seen Pirates of the Caribbean. Cool, good choice. I don't remember exactly which movie it was, but there's a scene in there where I think it's, maybe this first one, Captain Barbossa, I think. And he's talking about the curse that they have upon him, where they thirst and they drink something, but it doesn't satiate that. It doesn't quench their thirst. They eat, but it doesn't matter what they do. They long for so many things, but then they can't get fulfillment from those things, or they can't do those things successfully. And I feel like overall that seems to be my experience with autism. I feel like for me, there are so many things that I want to do, so many things that I push myself to do. I'm going to go outside of my comfort zone and get those things or experience those things. And then there's another part of my brain that says, oh, whoa, no, hang on, slow down. That's not going to happen. I'm going to give you a panic attack right now. I'm going to make you very afraid of that group of people over there. I'm going to let all these little small sounds make you just melt down and shut down such you have to go home. There's so many things that I want to do that I feel like I can't. And I don't necessarily want that to come across so negatively, because having autism is not exactly like this horrible death sentence negative thing. There's so many things that I can do. I just have to choose what I want. You have a time limit essentially, and I can't do all the things I want within that time limit. I just have to limit myself. I would love to date, and I've started to, and every time I do, even if it went well, I come home and I'm like, I can't do that again. That was an hour and a half of acting so intensely as someone who's normal. That was just too much for me. And so I'm kind of discouraged from doing it. Each new time I want to, it's like a huge obstacle to overcome. I want to go out and be social and be with so many cool people. There's so many cool people, just even that I consider friends that I want to do things with. And recently I've been trying to do that, and I'll set a day to do this with this person and this with that person, and I've come to the end of the week and I can't sleep. I am so stressed out of my mind from doing so many things that were fulfilling in the moment, but overall have led me to just crash. I now got to take a week off and hide from people completely. Every night has to be just me sitting in my small apartment with a Christmas tree that I still haven't taken down because it provides nice lighting. I'm not going to take the Christmas tree down. It's beautiful. And so that's now my safe spot that I have to go to and hide and recharge for weeks at a time. I want to engage in some of my interests. There's a lot of things that I love to do. Like I was saying earlier, when it clicks into that interest obsession mode, I will just go deeply into it. Last night I had to stop myself considering another career change, and I'm like, what would I really like to do? I don't know, aerospace engineering sounds cool. So I started doing that last night. I'm like, if I go down this road, I will not fall asleep at all tonight. So I had to stop myself from even watching YouTube videos about aerospace engineering, but I will be doing that tonight, so don't worry. There are things like I love music, and so I want to go out and engage with a concert crowd. I love going to see live bands, but I feel like as I've gotten older, I can't do that anymore. It's too exhausting. I'll get halfway through it and be like, it's either I'm gonna start rocking on the floor and everyone's gonna call the cops on me, or I have to leave, and I'm sorry, Blink-182, I can't see the rest of your show. Old Blink-182, not the new one. Anyway, not important. I want to be able to express myself. I want to be able to stick up for myself. I want to be able to connect with others. But then each of these things is so exhausting in different ways that it prevents me from doing it. And at the end of the day, I have to choose one out of the 300 things that I'd like to do today, or this week, or this month. And unfortunately, everything else has to be pushed aside. And I'm learning to try to be okay with that and recognize my own limitations, and just find some joy in myself and in the things that I can do alone by myself, which is hard because we were trained to be a social world, interact with everybody. If you're not spending your time with your friends, then you're alone and weird on the couch. It's hard to break through that, but at the same time, I don't know, that's just kind of what I feel I have to break through and find a way to enjoy my autism for what it is.
I'm just really grateful to be here and to listen to, it's hard to think about what I'm gonna say because I'm just so absorbed and yes, that too. So I have to tell you a really quick story. You mentioned dating, and all of a sudden it helped me connect the dots on something really funny. So on my first date with my husband, we met online, and it was kind of like a blind date, and we were planning on just meeting for coffee or something. And during the course of that conversation, my favorite topic on dates is to talk about how fake they are, and I'm like, isn't this a waste of our time? I don't know anything about you. You're just throwing words at my face. I haven't seen you in real situations, blah, blah, blah. And most people, it goes over really well. So in this first date conversation with my husband, that actually really resonated with him, and he was laughing, and we were like, what if we invented an app where you could orchestrate, it's like a dating app, but you could orchestrate catastrophes. So, on your way there, you're getting a flat tire, and then your credit card's decline, and then you get to actually see who the person is. And I still think this is a good idea, by the way. But then that led into a conversation about, just the value of words and small talk and blah, blah, blah. And long story short, we arrived at the conclusion that our next date would be a silent date. And so we went to a Renaissance fair, and we're in silence watching, and I've never been to a Renaissance fair, so we arrive and there are people swinging axes at each other and stuff. And I'm like, why did you bring me? This is interesting. But anyway, it just made me think about dating. You should try silent dating. It's very nice. I loved it. I was able to, that date was a few hours long, and it was good. And then I was like, okay, meltdown. Can we start talking and stop seeing things just for a minute? Because I needed some different processes. Yeah, silent marriage. You might want to consult some professionals on that. So I guess my message for the neurotypical world, if I could pick one thing, would be, so the metaphor that I kind of think about a lot is that the world is made up of one size of shoes, and that I'm supposed to go and put these shoes on. And for a long time I felt well, my feet are broken because I don't fit in those shoes. And what I've come to realize just over the last couple of years is that there is not a thing wrong with my feet. My feet are beautiful. The world just needs more sizes and shapes of shoes. And I think that will happen. I think it's happening already. And so I think, one of the things, mindfulness is a big thing, like I said, that's helped me. And that's been a really powerful tool for me. And some of the research around mindfulness is that one of the really powerful outcomes is that it helps to reveal hidden bias. And so, when we practice mindfulness and we're able to kind of get out of the thinking mind and into just pure awareness of what's here in this moment. And as an autistic person, I already tend to do that anyway, of just being really present with, what's here? What am I interpreting through my senses rather than through conditioning and norms and paradigms that I've learned over, X number of years in education and whatnot. And so I think it's been a really valuable skill for me, and I think it's a valuable thing, to be able to approach my world through that sensory experience, and so I can be very present in a genuine way. And I think that could be a really valuable thing for neurotypicals, not just for working with people with autism, but just in general. I mean, there's so much value to being able to be present to your hidden bias. Like, we all have unconscious bias, and there's a lot of stigma and a lot of myths around autism. And so I think mindfulness is this tool that has allowed me to kind of channel things and be very present with what's going on, and so I can catch myself before meltdowns or know how much I can handle in any given week or any given day. And so it's helpful for me individually, and so I think it can be a powerful tool potentially for people with autism. But at the end of the day, the message in terms of like uncovering your hidden bias and just being present. I remember, I think it was Julia Connolly that said to me once, like, when you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person. And so there's not really like a message of like, here's who we are. Like, we're diverse, and so I think if we can be mindful of the preconceived notions and assumptions, and our brain is wired to do that. Like, it's trying to be efficient, and so it makes like, okay, here's some categorizations and some labels and some things that I understand about this particular kind of person or kind of situation. And autism just doesn't work that way. And I don't think people really work that way, to be honest. And so I think the more we can practice showing up in our lives fully, instead of bringing all of these notions about what we think we know about what we're about to get into, and instead just say, okay, this is a fresh, brand new situation. It's a person I've never met, and maybe even if I've met them before, they're different today. Their hydration is different, their sleep is different, their level of stimulation is different. Like, literally, on a cellular level, like each moment is different in its own kind of unique, fresh way. So I think that's a really valuable thing that could help the world at large. But particularly, I think, as I go out into the world and I see people making assumptions about how I should be professionally or personally, or as a female, or as a person with autism or whatever. And I would love to be freed from that and say, I want to choose the shoes that'll fit my feet. I don't want you to put shoes in front of me and say, these better fit you, or you can't work here, or I won't be your friend, or whatever. So that, I think, would be my message. And it doesn't have to be through mindfulness, but I think just if we could be a little more humble and just recognize that most of the time we have no idea about anything at all, I think that would be really beneficial for our community.
Design thinking consultants get paid tens of thousands of dollars to hear the exact same information you just heard from them. Autism is the experience of being about as close to the raw nature of existence as you can possibly get. There are no filters between what's going on and what you're experiencing. That's really it, at least from my perspective and my experience. So if you walk away from this, from my comments, with nothing else, think about what it would be like to have absolutely no filters on your experience of the world. And I'm not talking about the world immediately. I'm talking about the entirety of your life experience. One of the analogies I like to share with people when I'm talking about what it's like to be on the autism spectrum and what the raw experience is to sit down and think about how all of your current experiences, what you're holding in your hand, what you're wearing, what's going on, what you're hearing, what you're feeling, what the air is doing to your hair, and think about what your life would be like if every time you had that single sensory experience of, say, for example, holding your phone, you had an immediate flashback to every other time you've held your phone, and how difficult it would be to sort out the now and the reality and where you're oriented, where you're at, from where you've been and where you might be in the future, and how disorienting powerful that can be as a medium and method for identifying patterns and seeing things that are just utterly invisible unless you are able to see beyond the immediate experience by experiencing all of your experiences at once. That is what it's like to be an autist, at least for me. I can't talk for anybody else. But that is both a value, an incredible value, and a curse. Welcome to the life of a professional outsider.
All right, thanks again to our panelists. And what I love about all of them is, as I was up there giving my keynote this morning, one of the things that made me nervous is I'm like, there are a lot of people in this audience who could totally do this keynote, not just me. And every one of them has that kind of insight. So, for the last 15 minutes of this panel, it's time for you in the audience. And so I'm going to come out with the microphone, and you can address your questions to either a specific panelist or to the group as a whole. Try to keep them short. And if you have things to share that afterward. This is for questions, but let's go.
Okay, my question's for everyone on the panel. My daughter was she's 13, but she wasn't diagnosed until last year. And so my biggest thing is, as a parent, I want to know what was the most beneficial thing that your parents did for you, either before diagnosis or after, just any time. You guys.
My parents were super poor, and so they couldn't really afford to do much. But what was cool about my parents is they just totally looked at each one of us kids, because we're all very neurodiverse, and they just accepted us completely for being totally different. One of my kids asked my mom one time, she's like, "Did you know that your son's autistic?" And she said, "Oh no, I just thought he was Jared. You know, it's just that's how Jared is."
My mom was a superhero. So I was diagnosed when I was 6. That should tell you enough, I suppose. And this is like in 1999. But I suppose it's just willing to fight the fight. Be willing to fight the fight against, especially the educators that don't want to understand. I think one of the good things about living in today's world, I think, like in the last few years, is that the broader cultural sentiment seems to be going toward advocating for those who are like on the outside, as you said. So I think that's a good thing, is that if you raise a stink, you'll probably win, as it were. And I think that's something that's valuable, is that the autistic person, the way I would say it is that what the parent needs to do probably is to give the autistic person space, and to let the teacher give the autistic person space, because really that's what I was trying to say, is that there needs to be enough space to let the autist declare herself, to become herself, to realize herself as she is inside and on the outside. And that can't happen in a world where we're supposed to be crammed into this size 6 shoe or whatever. No, it can't. We need to declare ourselves and have the right kind of shoes, and anything that is legalistic or that is extrinsic on the outside doing that will prevent that from happening, I suppose.
Not knowing until I was an adult, I think my parents, one of the biggest benefits for me was that the expectations never changed. There was no like, oh, Josh, he has like this special thing, so we're gonna not require this of him. It was just like, yeah, Josh, as soon as you're 18, you're going to college, you're gonna get out of my house, you're gonna go live on your own. And so when I turned 18, I did those things. And then my parents were like, no, come back. Why are you so gung-ho about leaving us? For 18 years, you told me this is what was gonna happen. And so if you give people like those strict boundaries, especially autism, so black and white, if you set those boundaries and those expectations and say, this is what has to happen, then you're gonna see your child or the person you're working with rise to meet those. We can't keep saving all of the people with autism or waiting until they're adults and say, well, we'll do everything for them now, but then expect independence from them later. You are stunting their growth, and you're kind of telling them that they're not capable of being independent. And then suddenly you flip-flop later and you say, well, why won't this person leave my house? Why won't they go out and get a job? Because you didn't require it. So my parents, having that requirement of just normal expectations helped. Obviously, I struggle with it, but it's obviously helped me to just meet those things in my own way.
Thank you for being here. I think that's really commendable that you're taking time out of your day to be here to take care of your daughter. I feel that so much in my heart. And I think I also thank you for your question. I tend to be really critical of my mother specifically and the things that she did wrong and the things that she should have done differently. And so I appreciate the question to be able to think differently about it. And I think, upon just the last 3-5 minutes of reflection, I would say one of the things that my mom did really well, and I was raised by a single mom, was that she always, and she didn't do it intentionally, but she focused on my strengths. Like she would focus on how creative I was, or how well I could focus on things, or how, whatever. She didn't ever treat me like I was fragile or broken or, I needed extra accommodations. She was just like, wow, look at this thing about you. Like, you can just sit and do that for hours. That's amazing, Or, oh, look at how much you recognize patterns and, like, the way you put blocks together is so interesting, And, if she's 13, so I guess she's probably not, maybe she's still using, I still like blocks, but, So I think that's a big thing. There's a lot of really, really cool, beautiful things about autism, like super cool. And I think, if teenagers or young people are able to recognize that early on, the world's going to be an amazing place by the time they hit the workforce and are able to have families of their own. So.
My answer to that question is very caustic. You can bypass me.
Never compare your child to any other children.
Right.
And don't tell her, well, so-and-so's dead. Let them be where they are. All right, questions? Okay.
So all of you are college graduates. I have possibly 2 autistic children who are getting those diagnoses later in life. One has one and the other one's 31, and he definitely Asperger's for sure, in my opinion. Anyway, in the college curriculum, you have to, and even me, maybe a little, you have to be able to get past the courses that you think are boring or that you don't like or that you're not interested in. And I know this is a big deal with people. It was even with me. I have 150 college credits and no degree. But how do you move through that place? I've sat in a statistics class twice and I've had such a bad anxiety attack I had to leave on the first day. I'll never have a degree without a statistics class. But, like my son also, I think he went through, he was always a failure in school until he GED'd out, but super high IQ. And then he went to Stevens Henniger and got straight A's in a graphic arts class, but then he had what you termed a crash. I had no idea that's what it was. We could never figure out why he stopped going. So now he has debt and no degree, but how do we steer him, or I don't know how to help, or what you do to get past that point?
So it took me 8 years to graduate. The first 4 were figuring out that nobody else had any idea how to teach me. There are classes that are going to be boring, but if you can get them to invest in the outcome, which is a degree in something that they're interested in, or a job that they really want to have, then they will buckle down and do the work. But if there's no end goal, then there's no point. It took me, what I actually ended up doing is the University of Utah has a wonderful program. It's called the Bachelor of Undergraduate Studies, where you get to go in and you get to pitch your own degree program. And this is by no means to say that it's a cop-out in any way. I've done 20% more credit hours than even the medical students. But I got to pick. every single one of those classes. And that invested me in the outcome. That will get them past any pain from sitting through a statistics course. That if they can't see the point, it's not going to happen. One of the wonderful things about individuals on the autism spectrum is that we are incredibly sensitive to bullshit. If you try and tell us that it's going to be worth it, when you can't actually prove that it's going to be worth it, we're going to call you on it.
I've seen a lot of success with people who learn the coping skills and so forth, but even just appealing to that sense of rules of like, yeah, this is stupid, but these are the hoops you have to jump through because the neurotypicals who set this up said you have to take this class here. And I had 182.5 credits in my undergrad, and BYU was like, please leave. Would you just please leave? So that's definitely there as well, but there are also a lot of cool technical programs now where you can go right into your specialty if you qualify once you get the entrance exam, and you don't have to take general education or some of those classes that are like, but yeah, other ideas.
Yeah, so one of my special interests lately has, interestingly enough, been productivity lately, which is fun. If you all haven't heard of the Getting Things Done method, please do invest yourself in it, right? It's the idea that if, maybe not in terms of sitting through classes, but in terms of homework, which I'm sure can also be a struggle, it's to make the next action on each project very clear, and then just list those, and then do those when you need them. So you, in a certain sense, separate what needs to be done from, let me put it this way. Let me put it this way. I made a list of the various factors that have to be incorporated in anything that needs to be done, as it were. And if I can see it with my near blindness, you basically ask of anything that needs to be done, is it important? That is this something that I need to do to get the job, to finish the degree? Then you also ask, is this something that is comfortable? Is it something that will help me accomplish something else better, right? So it's like, sometimes I need to not only do the thing, but clean the room so that I can do the thing better, right? Then the other question is now a good time to do it, right? Is it opportune? What can I do now that I can't do as well some other time? Would this time be better spent doing something else? And then the question is it comprehensive? Have I worked on this project recently? What haven't I worked on recently? Am I focusing on it too myopically? And if you were to summarize all of that, what I would say is that it's to focus not just on the what, but also on the how and the why. To focus on all of those together, because you can't reduce any of those to the other. You have to focus not just on what needs to be done, on the expense of how you're going to do it. Focus not just on how you're going to do things at the expense of what needs to be done, but keep in mind all of those together, because I think for the neurotypical, it just kind of turns into this unconscious project that kind of gets itself done. Or maybe not, I don't know. But there you go. I've talked too much, but you know.
My quick addition would actually just be, in terms of bullshit, and that applies to college, and that applies to everything, really. If you don't give your autistic person that you're working with a clear reason why they should be doing that thing, then it's not going to click in their mind. My dad tried so many times to be like, you should do this because I said so. And that does not work with me, because then I just found a way around it. And then I was like, see, Dad, you're wrong. And it made him even more mad. So if you want something to get done, just explain why in a logical way that they understand.
I just want to add one quick thing. I got to my 4th year of my undergrad and was like, oh, I'm supposed to graduate. And then like, how, oops. And I was totally that person. I just took a bunch of classes that I found interesting. And I went to Weber State, and they had a thing called the Bachelor's of Integrated Studies, which is 3 minors instead of a major. And so I just happened to have taken enough classes in, you know, these 3 different areas that I was able to kind of tie them together and say, I'm really interested in these things, and I think that the combination of them could, you know, I could have a career sort of here. But it really was more of like an accident than anything. So just the fact that I have a college education doesn't mean that it was like intentional and I had a plan. It was sort of like, oh, well, I guess I better graduate because I don't have any more money and my grants are running out. So. But the other thing I was gonna say just really quickly, two things. One, you know, just develop strategies. I know in the classes that were hardest for me, taking classes that I hated, like statistics early in the morning was always a bad idea. Having strategies for testing, like the disability centers have a lot of awesome strategies and support and stuff that you can offer if it makes sense and feels appropriate. But I would say, you know, just recognize that those environments are maybe going to be a little rougher and there's going to be more friction if you're not able to kind of focus in on an obsession. But then the last thing, and probably most importantly, is you should listen and trust yourself and your own intuition way more than any of us, because your kids are their own people and you know them and you love them and you're with them. So I would say just like trust that if you're there to support them and listen to them and you know, and that you're kind of focused on an outcome of I want my children to be successful and happy, whatever that looks like, then whatever you do will probably be awesome.
I had one more thing to add really quick. Paradoxically, oftentimes the best, the things when I get, the time when I am most successful is the times when I care about what I'm doing the least. Because the more I care about something, the more I really care about something, the more I make it into a big thing that is insurmountable, kind of a perfectionistic thing. But if I think of just, oh, this is just something I have to do, and then I end up doing it, it's like, oh, I've graduated. Oh, wow. But paradoxically, often the way to get things done is to not care about them. To care about them, yes, but just to say, oh, this is just something I can do. The most important thing is something else, right? Or something like that. Maybe that's a bad idea sometimes, but but definitely if you're caring about it too much, which often can manifest as a laziness or a procrastination, is to think this is no big deal. This is something I can handle.
All right, we are just about out of time, so we have time for one quick question.
Okay, this is a quick question, kind of a funny one. But sometimes I sit there and I'm thinking, I'm having one of those days where I don't want to socialize. And it's not because, like, I couldn't talk. It's probably because I could probably talk their ear off. But I keep thinking, okay, this subject is not one they would like. This one they probably disagree with me on. This one they've shown disinterest. And I'm like wrapping my brain, what can I bring up that can actually have an intelligent, happy conversation that won't bore me with them? So wondered if you had experienced that at all.
How do you talk?
All the time. So I have like a list of questions that I just keep in my mind, and I start with a question because people are always interested in talking about themselves. And so if I don't, I actually, even if I think I have something in common with that person, I'll still lead with a question. Because then it's just easier from there. Because then I can just kind of pick up like, oh, here's another question I can ask you. Here's another question I ask you. It turns into like a pretty one-sided conversation. But most of the time people don't care. So like, yay, me. So that works pretty well. So if you want to come up with like 4 or 5 questions that you can just throw out at any time about that person or their life or their whatever, I think that's worked pretty well for me.
But what if they say something and then you're like, I can't respond because they wouldn't like my response? I
Ask
can't
another
honestly
question.
tell them.
It's better that you learned and recognized that rather than just automatically blurt out the response and then you don't like it and then you defend them, like me.
Question. Just go with another question. If you're like, oh, you don't, my opinion on this is different, just say, oh, tell me more about blah. And then you can just like, you know, be aware of your facial features and that you're not. That's what I have to do. Is like, I have to ask you a question and then like pay attention, so I'm like not like, oh yeah.
Yeah, I would say try not to pay attention as much to the words or the tiny things. Focus on the bigger things in the conversation. Focus not on what you're going to say, but focus on the ideas the other person is expressing. Because oftentimes, and I think universally, when you focus on the meaning, the words just take care of themselves.
I always struggled with small talk until I learned to listen for intent. when I realized that it really, no one was caring about the weather. No one was caring about whatever other small talk stupid thing that I did not want to talk to them about. What they were saying was, hey, we're sharing an experience, aren't we? Hey, I'm trying to connect with you. And when I started being able to hear those intents, that really helped me a lot. And also then whenever they're talking about whatever I'm not interested in, it's like, well, I'm interested in a relationship with this person. So I'm really interested in whatever they're saying, because my goal here doesn't really have anything to do with what's being said, so much as the undercurrent of it. All right, you guys, let's have a big hand for our panel. This is honestly one of the best autism panels I've ever seen. That's pretty really cool. So thank you all for coming, and we got to move out to the next things, but if you want to ask our autists some additional questions, come on up.